Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
The Trial Update.
Welcome to the Trial Update, the inquiry. I'm Caroline Cheetham.
And I'm Liz Hull.
So the Thirlwall inquiry is back sitting again in Liverpool this week. And the reason they're back is because it's the final stage of this process before Lady Justice Thirlwall starts to consider the recommendations that she wants to make. Now, we know she's going to spend the summer writing her report, and it's hoped she may be able to report back in the autumn. But first, we should just mention that outside today's hearing this morning, there was a small demonstration by a group of supporters of Lucy Letby who spent about an hour protesting outside Liverpool Town Hall. Now, the point is that they don't believe that she is guilty of any crimes. And of course, all of this comes off the back of her new legal team, who've put an application into the CCRC, that's the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Now, the protests today were peaceful. It was organised by a group called the Partisan Defence Committee. And I suppose it was around 40 people that were there chanting "Free Lucy Letby." They were waving placards saying, "Free Lucy Letby, no babies were murdered, and Lucy Letby not guilty."
Yeah, that's right, Caroline. I'm here at the inquiry, but it's important to say that the protest didn't impact on the hearings getting underway themselves. And more importantly, really, there are two things that we need to mention, both of which became apparent before the inquiry even got underway today. One is that the judge, Lady Justice Thirlwall, revealed that just minutes before she took her seat, she'd received a letter from Lucy Letby's new solicitor asking for the inquiry to be paused. So we didn't hear much about this in detail today. We're going to hear more about it tomorrow, actually. But what we have seen is a copy of this letter from Louise Mortimer at Bandel Law, who represents Lucy Letby. And she raises a number of points in this letter. But crucially, she says the judge's final report would not only be redundant, but likely unreliable unless the inquiry was stopped until the conclusion of a review of her convictions. She goes on to say that there's overwhelming and compelling evidence that Lucy Letby's convictions are unsafe, and she's asked the inquiry to be suspended until the outcome of the review by the CCRC. It also says new evidence is going to be lodged with the CCRC this week, although we should probably point out that although they've confirmed they've received Lucy Letby's application, they haven't put any timescale on when they're going to look at it or assess it or when this review will be completed.
Yeah, and in addition to this letter from Lucy Letby's new solicitors, we also know that an application has been submitted by the barristers who represent the former senior managers, making effectively really the same request. Now, it was actually made last month, but it's only just come to light over the past few days. And it's come, as we said, from those senior managers, specifically the former Chief Executive Tony Chambers, the former Medical Director Ian Harvey, the former Director of Nursing Alison Kelly, and the former HR Director Sue Hodkinson. Now, they're all what's called core participants in this inquiry. And again, we don't know the full detail of their application, but their barrister, who's called Kate Blackwell, KC, will lay out some of the reasons why they are saying it needs to be paused in her submission tomorrow. So obviously, We'll be back from Liverpool with all of the detail of all of that tomorrow in our usual full trial episode tomorrow afternoon. But we should say here, I think, that it's not actually up to Lady Justice Thirlwall to decide this. That decision has got to be made in consultation with the Secretary of State.
Right, so just to get to the detail of what happened today, Caroline, the first barrister to get to his feet was Neil Sheldon KC, who represents the Department of Health, and more specifically Wes Streeting, the Secretary of State. Now, he said what happened at the Countess should never have happened in the first place, and he said the government was committed to learning lessons and to implementing real, lasting change. He told Lady Justice Thirlwall, "I can assure you and the public of the commitment of the Secretary of State that this is achieved in this case." And he spoke about improvements in reporting and monitoring data around death rates in hospitals, and said measures had already been put in place for staff not just to report them, but also to analyse and make sure they take appropriate action on trends, such as an unusual spike in deaths.
Yeah, and he also accepted that evidence given by witnesses, especially the doctors who tried, as we know, to blow the whistle on Lucy Letby, was deeply troubling. He said that despite this speak out safely policy that was put in place at the hospital, it didn't appear to have been followed and staff didn't recognise its purpose or its value. And he said that what was most troubling of all was the doctors felt bullied or intimidated, and some feared, with justification, he said, that they may lose their jobs. And he said that the former senior managers acted in a contrary way to basic whistleblowing principles by looking to manage the consultants out of their roles, threatening to refer them to the General Medical Council. And he said this: "A culture of openness and honesty is vital for patient safety, and the Secretary of State has been clear that the government will not tolerate in the NHS managers that silence whistleblowers or attempt to do so."
And he pointed out that a government consultation into whether senior leaders in hospital trusts should be better regulated had received 5,000 responses and was now being looked at. But he said what was lacking at the Countess back in 2015 was strong, open-minded leadership, or managers that had been confident to do the right thing when concerns were raised. And he said that while increased regulation around senior leaders in hospitals would be one thing to consider, it didn't mean hospital boards still didn't have a crucial job to do. In fact, he said boards needed to be curious, and the board at the Countess was not. He also said the Secretary of State was committed to improving training and quality of senior leadership in the NHS, and would be setting up a college of executive and clinical leadership for all NHS managers, not just graduates who go into the NHS immediately after finishing university.
Yeah, he also confirmed something else that we've heard a lot about during this inquiry, this duty of candour, which we know compels every hospital trust to be open and transparent with patients. And that was not followed in this case. And he said it was now under review. And he also said the government accepted they needed to get better when it came to implementing recommendations from the public inquiry. And actually, we did an episode on this a few weeks ago now, where we spoke to an expert in this who said that there were constantly these public inquiries, recommendations were made, and in so many cases, for so many different reasons, they were not implemented, they were not agreed with, and nothing appeared to come of them. And a real sense that something needs to happen as a result of public inquiries now is obviously what is being looked at. And we know that's not happened consistently with situations like the Morecambe Bay, Mid-Staffs, East Kent, all inquiries taking place over the last 30 years. And Mr. Sheldon said lessons have got to be learned and real change enacted.
Yeah, and he also said that the government had followed the inquiry really closely. And he said that he knew that much of the evidence must have been very difficult for the families of Lucy Letby's victims to hear. But he praised the families for their remarkable dignity and resilience. And he said that everyone in the Department of Health, including Wes Streeting, wished to pay tribute to them.
Yeah, so Mr. Sheldon was a really significant voice today, as was Andrew Kennedy KC. Now, he represents the Countess of Chester Hospital, and he was actually the last barrister to speak. But it's fair to say, Liz, he was incredibly significant and he made some really interesting concessions about how the hospital had behaved and acted in 2015 and 2016. Now, of course, we know that the senior managers from the Countess, as we said, have asked for this inquiry to be paused. But he said the hospital did not agree. He said they did not believe a referral of Lucy Letby's case to the CCRC warranted this inquiry being stopped. In fact, he said that her convictions stand. They've been tested in 2 unsuccessful appeals, and pausing the inquiry would only serve, he said, to delay recommendations being implemented in the wider NHS, which he said were desperately needed.
He said the hospital apologised without reservation for its failings. And then he went on to say something we've actually never heard before. And he said that after listening to the evidence, the hospital now accepted that Lucy Letby should have been suspended from working as early as October 2015. Now, that's significant because in their opening statement to the inquiry, the hospital said they should have done more after March 2016. But Mr. Kennedy said the hospital's position had now changed. And the correct course of action would have been to suspend Lucy Letby 5 months earlier, following the death of baby I. In reality, we know she wasn't removed from the ward for another 8 months, which meant she was able to kill 2 more children and harm another 5 babies. Mr. Kennedy said the hospital recognised the significance of this for the families of babies attacked after the end of October 2015, and said the hospital was profoundly sorry for failing to intervene sooner.
The babies and their families deserved better. They were let down by systemic and individual failings, which had the gravest imaginable consequences. The families trusted their precious children to the care of the trust and its employees.
Yeah, so a really, really big concession there from the hospital compared to what they'd said in their opening statement when all of this began. That is it for today from both things happening inside and outside this inquiry in Liverpool. We're here again tomorrow when we're expecting to hear from the barristers representing the senior executives and also the barristers representing the families.
See you then.
May 23rd, 1862. The soldiers of the 1st Maryland Infantry Regiment are on the lines, both of them. Though the blue and gray uniforms of the Confederacy and Union divide these men, they are all Marylanders, neighbors, colleagues, even brothers, fighting it out in a battle that perfectly captures the most poignant reality of a nation at war with itself. Join me, Don Wildman, on American History Hit as we return to the battlefields of the Civil War. Why did this war begin? How was it fought? And how did it all pan out? American History Hit, a podcast from History Hit. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.